Imagine waking up one day and realizing that every thought you believed to be your own may never have been, that every desire, opinion, impulse, or fear was carefully orchestrated by systems you don't see, control, or understand. We live in an era where algorithms decide what you watch, what you believe, and even who you think you are. But here's the question no one dares to ask. How do you awaken spiritually when your consciousness is shaped by machines? Today, we'll delve into the heart of a digital labyrinth where the real battle isn't technological, it's spiritual. And the truth is simple and brutal. You are being manipulated. The question now is, how do you escape? Before we continue this journey together, I need to ask you a sincere question. How many times today did you pick up your phone without even realizing why? How many times did your fingers glide across the screen as if they had a will of their own? If you stop to think about it now, then you're already one step ahead of most people. And if this content resonates with you, leave a like now and share it with someone who also needs to hear this. Modern algorithms don't just recommend content. They read patterns, track emotions, and anticipate your decisions. They know when you're sad, when you're vulnerable, when you're alone, and they use this to keep you trapped. This mechanism creates an illusion of choice, when in reality, your every move has already been predicted. It's the first layer of manipulation, convincing you that you're in control. Awakening here requires realizing that what seems spontaneous is often induced. Your free will hasn't disappeared. It's just been silently hijacked. Think about it for a moment. You're lying in bed, it's 2 in the morning, and you promise yourself you'll go to sleep after one more video. But that video leads to another, which leads to another, which leads to yet another. Suddenly the sun is rising, and you don't even know how the hours have passed. This is not a coincidence. This is not a lack of willpower. This is behavioral engineering in its most sophisticated form. The algorithms were designed by some of the brightest minds on the planet. Psychologists, neuroscientists, data engineers working together with a single goal: to capture your attention and never let it go. They studied every human weakness, every emotional trigger, every behavioral pattern, and they transformed that knowledge into code. When you open a social network, you're not just accessing an app. You're entering an invisible battlefield where you are simultaneously the target and the prize. Each color has been chosen to evoke certain emotions. Each notification has been programmed to release dopamine at the exact moment. Each feed has been customized to show precisely what will keep you scrolling. What's most disturbing is that these systems learn, they evolve, they adapt to you specifically. There isn't a generic algorithm that works the same for everyone. There's an algorithm that was trained specifically for you, using every click you've ever made, every second you've spent on every post, every reaction you've had. He knows when you're bored and offers you distraction. He knows when you're anxious and offers you false comfort. He knows when you're feeling lonely and shows you superficial connections that seem to fill the void, but in reality deepen it. It's like having an emotional manipulator living in your pocket, someone who knows your weaknesses better than you do and exploits them 24 hours a day. And here's the part few want to admit. You're not fighting against a company or an app. You're fighting against a version of yourself that has been studied, mapped, and transformed into data. The algorithm doesn't manipulate you from the outside in. It uses your own desires, your own fears, your own wounds against you. It's the perfect weapon because it was forged from the material of your own psyche. Ancient mystics spoke of inner demons, of forces that dwell within us and lead us astray. Perhaps they were describing something that only now are we able to fully understand. The modern demon has neither horns nor a tail. It has user-friendly interfaces and colorful notifications. It doesn't tempt you with obvious offers of power or pleasure. It tempts you with the promise that you are in control, when in reality every choice has already been pre-selected for you. The first step to escaping any prison is recognizing that you are imprisoned. And the algorithmic prison is especially treacherous because its bars are made of comfort, convenience, and entertainment. No one escapes a prison that looks like an amusement park. No one questions chains that feel like embraces. But you're here, you're listening. And that means that some part of you, deep down, has already sensed that something is wrong. This unease you feel isn't paranoia, it's intuition. It's your true self trying to communicate through all the layers of digital noise that have been piled upon your consciousness. The spiritual quest has always been an internal journey, introspection, silence, connection. But today, the spiritual is mixed with the superficial, quick videos, ready-made phrases, fleeting gurus. The digital age has traded depth for speed, wisdom for stimulation. What was once an inner search has now become endless scrolling. Awakening requires a rare ability, not getting lost in excess. The manipulation here is subtle. You think you're learning, but you're just accumulating noise. There was a time when seeking spiritual knowledge required sacrifice. Seekers crossed deserts, climbed mountains, and spent years in isolated monasteries. Not because the truth was geographically distant, but because the journey itself was part of the teaching. The path prepared the pilgrim to receive what they sought. Today, any teaching is just a click away. You can access sacred texts from ancient traditions while waiting for your coffee to brew. You can listen to lectures by spiritual masters while stuck in traffic. You can consume more wisdom in a week than a medieval monk consumed in a lifetime. And paradoxically, we have never been so spiritually impoverished. The problem isn't access to information, the problem is what we do with it. When knowledge comes too easily, we treat it with the same superficiality with which we treat any other digital content. We scroll through quotes from Buddha with the same speed as we scroll through cat memes. We absorb fragments of ancient wisdom between one advertisement and another. And then we wonder why we don't feel any transformation. True spirituality has never been about accumulating information. It's about integrating understandings. It's about allowing truths to penetrate so deeply within you that they change the way you see, think, and act. This doesn't happen in seconds. This doesn't happen while you're doing 5 other things at once. It requires total presence, complete surrender, dedicated time. But the digital environment is designed to fragment your attention, not to deepen it. Every time you start to focus on something meaningful, a notification interrupts you. Every time an insight begins to form in your mind, a new stimulus scatters it. You never stay with any idea long enough for it to take root. And so a new category of person emerges, the superficial spiritualist. Someone who knows all the terms, quotes all the masters, practices all the fashionable techniques, but has never experienced the real transformation that these traditions promise. It's like someone who has read all the books on swimming, watched all the videos, bought all the equipment, but has never entered the water. The saddest thing is that many of these people genuinely believe they are on the right path. The illusion of progress has replaced real progress. They confuse collecting concepts with developing awareness. They confuse following spiritual profiles with following a spiritual path. They confuse the excitement of discovering something new with the depth of fully understanding something. Algorithms love this type of search engine. The more spiritual content you consume without transforming yourself, the more content you need to maintain the illusion of growth. It's like a hamster on a wheel, running faster and faster, convinced it's getting somewhere, without realizing it's always at the same point. The true spiritual practice in the digital age is perhaps precisely the ability to stop, to choose depth over quantity, to stay with a single teaching for the time necessary to truly understand it, even if it means ignoring thousands of other teachings that the algorithm is eager to show you. This requires a form of discipline that our ancestors never needed to develop. They were limited by access. We are limited by our own capacity to resist excess. And frankly, this may be the most difficult spiritual battle humanity has ever faced. Because the enemy isn't out there trying to stop us from finding the truth. The enemy is drowning us in partial truths so that we never find the complete one. Every interaction you have creates a digital version of you, a psychological avatar shaped by data. This algorithmic you starts making decisions for you. What you like, what you reject, what irritates you, what fascinates you. And the more time you spend online, the more this artificial self replaces your real self. The spiritual danger is enormous. How can you awaken if you no longer know who you are? The path is to recognize that the greatest modern illusion is believing that identity is what the internet reflects. There is a copy of you living on the servers of dozens of companies right now. This copy doesn't breathe, doesn't feel, doesn't dream. But in a way, it acts. It makes decisions. It influences your life in ways you can't even imagine. Every time you interact with the digital world, you are feeding this virtual double. Every click, every pause, every hesitation, every scroll that's too fast or too slow goes into a database that composes an increasingly detailed portrait of who you are, or rather, of who the algorithms think you are. And here's the fundamental problem. This digital version of you isn't you. It's a simplification, a caricature, a mathematical model that captures certain behavioral patterns but completely ignores the complexity, the contradiction, the mystery that constitutes a real human being. Have you ever had the experience of an algorithm showing you something and you thinking, "This has nothing to do with me"? This happens because the system classified you based on past behaviors without understanding that you are a being in constant transformation. It froze you in a category. It reduced you to a set of probabilities. But what's truly frightening isn't when the algorithm is wrong. It's when it's so right that you start questioning your own identity, when it knows you better than you know yourself, when it predicts your choices before you make them. At that moment, who's in control? Are you deciding or just confirming the predictions of a machine? There's a phenomenon documented in psychology that shows how people tend to conform to the expectations others have of them. If everyone expects you to be a certain way, you unconsciously start acting that way. Now imagine that effect multiplied by billions of daily interactions with systems that constantly show you a specific version of who you are. The algorithm doesn't just predict your behavior, it shapes it. By repeatedly showing you certain types of content, it reinforces certain parts of your personality while weakening others. By connecting you with people similar to you, it confirms your existing beliefs while isolating you from different perspectives. By offering you pre-selected choices, it limits the field of possibilities before you even begin to explore. Over time, you and your digital avatar begin to converge. Not because the algorithm understood you perfectly, but because you unconsciously adjusted yourself to look more like the simplified version it created of you. It's as if you've been looking into a distorted mirror for so long that you've begun to mold your face to match the distortion. Spiritual traditions have always warned about the dangers of identifying with the false self. Buddhists call this attachment to the illusory ego. Hindus speak of confusing the Atman with the superficial layers of personality. Christian mystics distinguish between the carnal self and the spiritual self. All these traditions agree on one point. Awakening means transcending the fabricated identity to discover who you truly are. In the digital age, this task has become infinitely more complex. Because now we not only have a false inner self to transcend, but also a false outer self, an algorithmic construct that is constantly being projected back at us as if it were our true face. The path to awakening today demands a radical question that you need to ask yourself repeatedly. Is what I'm feeling genuinely mine, or was it induced? Is this opinion I hold the fruit of my reflection, or is it an echo of what I've been shown? Does this desire I feel originate from my essence, or was it planted by a system that profits from my dissatisfaction? Before we move on to the next topic, answer me this in the comments. Can you identify something about yourself that you know is genuinely yours, something that no algorithm has been able to touch or modify? Think about that as we continue. Ancient religions had rituals, doctrines, symbols. Today, we have notifications, likes, instant rewards. Dopamine has become the new hidden god, invisible but dominant. All digital manipulation depends on this cycle, which traps you with quick pleasure and distracts you from depth. Awakening means breaking this cycle, recovering the ability to contemplate and remain in silence. Where there is no silence, there is no consciousness. And where there is no consciousness, there is manipulation. For millennia, humanity has sought the transcendent through practices that demanded effort, discipline, and time. Prolonged fasts, hours of meditation, complex rituals, exhausting pilgrimages. Why? Because our ancestors intuitively understood that ordinary consciousness, that which is focused on immediate gratification, was incapable of accessing deeper truths. It was necessary to transcend the ordinary cycle of desire and satisfaction to achieve something greater. Now observe what we have done. We have created an entire civilization based on the opposite principle. Instead of transcending the reward cycle, we have intensified it to the extreme. Instead of training the mind to find peace beyond pleasure, we have trained it to seek pleasure ever faster, more frequently, more intensely. Dopamine, that neurotransmitter that signals the anticipation of reward, has become the currency of the digital economy. Every product, every service, every platform has been optimized to trigger it. The sound of a notification, the rising number of likes, the excitement of a new follower, the suspense of what's to come in the next video. Everything has been carefully calibrated to hijack your reward system. The most perverse aspect of this system is that it doesn't satisfy. Dopamine isn't the neurotransmitter of ultimate pleasure. It's the neurotransmitter of seeking. It puts you in a state of anticipation, of wanting more. Every time you receive a digital reward, your brain doesn't think, "Great, I'm satisfied." It thinks, "More, I need more." This is exactly the mechanism of any addiction, and it's no exaggeration to use that word. Neuroimaging studies show that the brain of a person addicted to social media lights up in the same areas as the brain of a substance addict when exposed to the object of their addiction. The only difference is that digital addiction is socially accepted, encouraged, and even necessary to participate in modern life. Traditional religions, with all their flaws, offered something that the religion of dopamine does not: a way out of the cycle. They promised that through certain practices and renunciations, you could achieve a state of peace that did not depend on external stimuli, a contentment that came from within, not from without, a joy that did not need to be constantly renewed by new doses. The religion of dopamine promises the exact opposite. It says, there is no peace outside the cycle. Your only hope for happiness is to keep consuming, clicking, scrolling, buying, searching. The moment you stop is the moment anxiety begins. And so you continue, not for real pleasure, but for fear of the emptiness that appears when the stimuli cease. This void, which digital culture has taught us to fear and avoid at all costs, is precisely the space where awakening happens. Masters of all traditions spoke of it: the desert of Christian mystics, the sunyata of Buddhists, the fana of Sufis, all pointing to the same truth. It is necessary to cross the void, not flee from it. But how do you get through something you never find? The system is designed so that you never have enough silence for emptiness to appear. There's always another notification, another video, another piece of content waiting to fill every microsecond of boredom or discomfort. Breaking the dopamine cycle is, therefore, the first concrete step towards awakening in the digital age. It doesn't mean abandoning all technology. It means recovering the ability to exist without constant stimulation. It means being able to sit in silence for half an hour without every cell in your body screaming for distraction. It means relearning the fundamental human skill of simply being present, doing nothing, consuming nothing, being entertained by nothing. This is frighteningly difficult at first. Your brain has been rewired, reconnected to depend on a constant flow of stimuli. When you deprive it of that, it reacts with anxiety, restlessness, racing thoughts. It feels like something is terribly wrong, but it isn't. It's just the feeling of withdrawal. And like any withdrawal, it passes if you persevere. On the other side of this discomfort lies something you may have forgotten exists: the ability to simply be. Not to do, not to consume, not to produce, just to exist. Conscious, present, alive. It's a state so rare in modern life that when people experience it for the first time in years, many cry. Not from sadness, but from recognition. From returning home after an exile they didn't even know they were living. If this content is touching you in any way, if something inside you is saying, yes, that's exactly it, then help me reach more people who need to hear this. Share this video right now. It could be the message that changes someone's life. The modern world no longer allows for boredom, and that's intentional. Boredom is the gateway to deep reflection, to self-discovery. If you are never silent, you never connect with your essence. The manipulation here is simple. If you are always distracted, you never wake up. Awakened consciousness grows in emptiness, not in excess. That's why the age of algorithms produces endless distraction. It destroys the space where awakening is born. There is a war being waged right now, and the battlefield is your capacity to be bored. It sounds strange to say this, but boredom is one of the most precious resources a human being can have, and it is being systematically eliminated. Think about what life was like before smartphones. You waited in lines, sat in waiting rooms, traveled on buses, and during those moments there was nothing to do except think. Your mind wandered, you daydreamed. Sometimes you felt uncomfortable with your own thoughts. But it was precisely in those moments that the important questions arose. Who am I? What am I doing with my life? What really matters? Now each of these moments has been colonized. You have a cell phone in your pocket that ensures you never have to be alone with your own thoughts for more than a few seconds. Every interval, every gap, every pause is immediately filled with content. And so the important questions never have a chance to emerge. It's no coincidence. The current economic system depends on you not stopping to overthink. If you genuinely reflected on your priorities, perhaps you would realize that you don't need to buy so much, consume so much, work so much. Perhaps you would realize that the race you're in leads nowhere. Perhaps you would realize that you are trading your limited time on this planet for things that don't bring you real happiness. This type of perception is dangerous for an economy based on compulsive consumption. So the solution was simple. Ensure that this reflection never happens. Keep people so busy, so stimulated, so distracted that the question about the meaning of life is not even formulated. Entertainment has become so ubiquitous that we no longer perceive it as entertainment. It has merged with the very experience of being alive. We wake up, and the first thing we do is check notifications. We sleep with our cell phones next to our beds. We eat while watching something. We walk while listening to something. There is no longer a moment not mediated by some form of digital content. 20th century existentialist philosophers warned about this, even before the internet. They talked about how human beings escape from themselves through distractions because confronting their own existence is distressing. But they couldn't imagine how efficient this escape would become. They wrote about the man who fills his life with activities to avoid thinking about death. We have created a system that does this automatically, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The result is a humanity that is simultaneously overstimulated and profoundly empty. We have access to more entertainment than all previous generations combined, and never have rates of depression and anxiety been so high. Not despite the constant entertainment, but because of it. Because entertainment does not fulfill the human need for meaning. It merely masks its absence. Escaping boredom is escaping oneself, and escaping oneself guarantees that you will never find yourself. Spiritual awakening has always demanded the opposite movement, moving towards oneself even when it is uncomfortable, especially when it is uncomfortable. Zen masters tell the story of a student who asks a master how to achieve enlightenment. The master replies, "Have you eaten your rice?" The student says yes. "Then go wash your bowl," says the master. The teaching seems too simple, but it contains a profound truth. Enlightenment is not found in extraordinary experiences. It lies in the ability to be fully present in ordinary activities without needing additional stimulation. Today, who can wash a bowl simply by washing the bowl? Who can eat simply by eating without watching something at the same time? Who can walk simply by walking without headphones filling every silence? These simple abilities have become rare, almost supernatural powers. The matrix of constant entertainment is not a conspiracy in the classical sense. No one sat in a room and decided to keep humanity distracted to prevent spiritual awakening. It's something more subtle and harder to combat. It's the logic of the system operating as designed. Every company trying to capture more attention, every product trying to be more engaging, every platform trying to be more addictive. The aggregate result is an environment where inner silence has become almost impossible, but it's almost not completely. This is where your agency, your choice comes in. You can decide to create empty spaces in your life. You can deliberately leave moments without digital fill. You can relearn the ancient art of doing nothing. It's not easy. At first, the emptiness will seem unbearable. Your conditioned brain will protest violently. But if you persist, something extraordinary begins to happen. The emptiness that seemed threatening reveals itself to be nourishing. The silence that seemed dead reveals itself to be alive. And in this reclaimed space, the important questions finally have a chance to emerge. Every second of attention is worth money, worth power, worth dominance. Companies don't just want your clicks. They want your beliefs, your values, your fears. The modern spiritual battle no longer takes place in temples, but on screens. The enemy is not physical, it's psychological. Awakening means taking back what you've given up, your eyes, your attention, your vital energy. Whoever controls your attention controls your reality. There's an economic concept called the attention economy. It's the idea that, in a world of abundant information, the scarce resource is no longer the information itself, but the human attention needed to process it. Your attention has become a commodity, a product that is bought, sold, and fought over by trillion-dollar corporations. But reducing this to just economics is to miss the deeper dimension of what is at stake. Your attention is not merely an economic resource. It is the very foundation of your conscious experience. It is through attention that you experience reality. It is through it that you connect with other people, with nature, with the sacred. It is through it that you connect with yourself. When you surrender your attention to a system designed to manipulate it, you're not just wasting time. You're wasting experience. You're wasting life. Every hour spent compulsively scrolling is an hour you didn't spend present with your children, watching a sunset, having a deep conversation with a friend, or simply fully existing. Spiritual traditions have always understood the sacred power of attention. Buddhists place it at the center of their practice with mindfulness meditation. Christian mystics spoke of contemplative prayer as uninterrupted attention to God. Sufis developed practices of constant presence. All these traditions recognize that where you place your attention is where you place your soul. Now imagine billions of people having their souls systematically redirected not toward the divine, not toward their neighbor, not toward themselves, but toward endless content feeds designed to generate profit. It's a spiritual reorientation of historic proportions, and it happened so gradually that almost no one noticed. The war for your eyes is real. There are entire teams of engineers, designers, and psychologists whose sole job is to figure out how to make you look at a screen for longer. They test different shades of red for the notification icon, discovering which exact shade is hardest to ignore. They test different reward patterns, discovering which sequence of stimuli is most addictive. They test different ways of presenting content, discovering which layout is hardest to abandon. You're at a disadvantage in this battle. On one side, your human willpower, limited, tiring, and prone to moments of weakness. On the other, algorithms that never sleep, that learn from every interaction, that are constantly optimized by some of the brightest minds on the planet. It's David versus Goliath, except Goliath has an army of data scientists working for him. But there is a power you possess that no algorithm can duplicate. The awareness that the battle is taking place. The system relies on your ignorance. It depends on you believing you are simply relaxing, staying informed, connecting. The moment you realize you are being hunted, you gain a crucial advantage. Every time you pick up your phone, you can make a conscious choice. Not an automatic choice, not an induced choice, but a real choice. You can ask yourself, am I using this tool, or is it using me? Am I directing my attention, or is it being captured? Am I in control, or am I on autopilot? This constant vigilance is exhausting. It's much easier to simply surrender and let the algorithms guide your experience. But ease is not the criterion of the spiritual path. The spiritual path often requires going against the current, swimming against the flow, choosing the difficult when the easy is the temptation. Reclaiming your own attention is the first act of spiritual rebellion in the digital age. It's declaring that your attention is not for sale, that your life experience is not a product, that your soul is not a resource to be extracted. There has never been so much information and so little wisdom. People confuse being up to date with being awake. They confuse opinion with awareness. They confuse algorithms with truth. Manipulation here is fatal. You believe you know, when in reality you are only echoing what you have been shown. Awakening requires filtering, doubting, questioning, searching on your own. Spirituality is not born from an excess of content. It is born from the ability to perceive the essence. We live in the most informed era in human history, and paradoxically, one of the most ignorant. Not ignorant due to a lack of data, but ignorant due to an excess of it. Drowned in information, we are dying of thirst for wisdom. The difference between information and wisdom is crucial and has been completely obscured by digital culture. Information is data, facts, numbers, news. Wisdom is the ability to discern what is important from what is noise, what is true from what is manipulation, what is worth your attention from what is distraction. You can be perfectly informed about the latest news, the latest trends, the latest scandals, and still have no idea how to live a meaningful life. You can know all the facts and understand no truth. You can be up to date on everything and be blind to what is essential. The algorithm exacerbates this problem in subtle ways. It doesn't show you a representative sample of reality. It shows you a version specifically curated to maximize your engagement. This means you are constantly seeing a distorted reality, a reality filtered through your own confirmed and amplified biases. If you tend to see the world in a certain way, the algorithm will show you more and more content that confirms that view. Not because it's true, but because confirmation generates engagement. Over time, you end up convinced that your particular view of the world is the only possible one, the only reasonable one, the only true one. and people with different views arrive at the same conclusion about their own views. The result is a society fragmented into bubbles of incompatible reality, each absolutely convinced that it is informed and the others are misinformed, each pointing to the others as proof of manipulation, without realizing that they are all being manipulated by the same system. The illusion of being informed is perhaps more dangerous than declared ignorance. The ignorant person knows that they don't know. They may be curious, they may ask questions, they may be open to learning, but those who are convinced that they already know have no reason to seek. Their ignorance is shielded by certainty. Ancient philosophers said that the beginning of wisdom is recognizing one's own ignorance. Socrates declared that he only knew that he knew nothing, and this is what distinguished him from those who thought they knew without knowing. This epistemological humility is almost impossible to maintain when you are constantly bombarded with information that confirms your existing beliefs. Awakening in this context demands a radical form of skepticism, not the cynical skepticism that believes in nothing, but the healthy skepticism that questions everything, including its own certainties, especially its own certainties. The skepticism that asks, why am I seeing this? Who benefits from me believing this? What perspectives are being excluded from my field of vision? It's exhausting work. It's much easier to simply accept what the feed shows you and form your opinions based on that. But this ease comes at a cost. You stop thinking for yourself. Your opinions cease to be your own. You become an echo of algorithms, repeating what you've been shown as if it were your own conclusion. True information requires effort. It requires actively seeking perspectives different from your own. It requires reading sources that make you uncomfortable, not just those that confirm your beliefs. It requires grappling with complexity instead of fleeing to comforting simplifications. It requires admitting that you might be wrong, that you're probably wrong about many things, that the truth is more complicated than any simple narrative allows. This kind of genuine information is rare because it's laborious. The algorithm offers you easy certainty. The truth offers difficult doubt, and in the competition for your attention, easy certainty almost always wins, but it's almost never the case. You can still choose. You can decide that you prefer uncomfortable truths to comforting lies. You can cultivate the humility of someone who knows they don't know. You can keep your mind open even when everything conspires to close it. Awakening in the age of algorithms isn't about abandoning technology. It's about mastering your mind before it's molded. It's about reclaiming the ability to think without being led. It's about creating moments of silence within the digital chaos. It's about understanding that the greatest enemy of awakening today isn't evil, it's distraction. The path begins when you decide one thing: I will not be led. I will be conscious. We've reached the crucial point. What to do with all this? You now understand the problem. You understand how algorithms operate, how they capture attention, how they shape identity, how they replace depth with stimulus. But understanding without action is merely intellectual entertainment. And you're not here to be entertained, you're here to awaken. The first step isn't dramatic. It doesn't involve throwing your phone in the river or moving to a cabin in the mountains. These extreme reactions are, in fact, another form of escape. True transformation happens not by escaping the digital world, but by learning to exist in it without being dominated by it. The first step is simply to notice. Before changing any behavior, just observe. The next time you pick up your phone, notice the impulse that led you to pick it up. Was it a conscious decision or an automatic reaction? Did it have a specific purpose, or was it just a reflex? While you use the device, observe your reactions. What makes you keep scrolling? What emotions arise? When you finally put your phone away, how do you feel? This non-judgmental observation is the fundamental practice. You're not trying to change anything yet. You're simply illuminating what previously happened in the dark. You're bringing awareness to where there was only automatism before. And this simple act of seeing already begins to transform. Meditation masters teach that the observer and the observed cannot be the same thing. The moment you observe an impulse, you are no longer entirely controlled by it. There is now a space between the stimulus and the response. This space is tiny at first, almost imperceptible, but it is the space where freedom resides. With practice, this space grows. You begin to notice the urge to pick up your phone and can choose not to act immediately. You can let the urge exist without obeying it. You can watch it grow, reach a peak, and then naturally diminish. It's a revealing experience, discovering that you can feel an intense desire and not be enslaved by it. The second step is to create disconnection rituals. It doesn't have to be hours of silent meditation, although that's valuable if you can manage it. You can start small. 5 minutes in the morning before looking at any screen, 5 minutes at night before bed. These small oases of silence are seeds. Over time, they can grow into more substantial practices. During these moments of disconnection, don't try to do anything special. Don't try to meditate correctly or achieve any altered state. Just be present. Observe your breath. Feel your body. Let your thoughts pass without clinging to them. If anxiety arises, observe the anxiety. If boredom arises, observe the boredom. Everything is material for practice. The third step is to heal your informational diet. Just as you become what you eat physically, you become what you consume mentally. Conduct an honest audit. What are you putting into your mind daily? How much of it nourishes and how much pollutes? How much uplifts you and how much drags you down? Start being deliberate about what you consume. Unsubscribe from channels that don't add real value. Unfollow profiles that make you anxious, envious, or irritated. Actively seek content that expands your mind instead of just stimulating it. Prefer depth over quantity. The fourth step is to reconnect with the analog. The physical world didn't disappear while we were all staring at screens. Nature still exists. Physical books still exist. Face-to-face conversations still exist. These analog elements of life have a different quality than the digital experience. They are slower, less immediately stimulating, but infinitely more nourishing. Deliberately plan activities that don't involve screens. Walks in nature, meals with friends where everyone leaves their cell phones away, reading physical books. Manual activities like gardening, cooking, crafts. These activities reconnect you with aspects of the human experience that were becoming atrophied. The fifth step is to find community. The path to awakening is too lonely if walked alone. Seek out people who share your intention to live more consciously. These can be existing friends whom you invite on this journey. They can be meditation or study groups. They can be online communities, ironically, as long as they are genuine and not just another form of endless scrolling. The community serves as a mirror and a support system. When you're surrounded by people on autopilot, it's difficult to maintain your own vigilance. When you're surrounded by awake people, vigilance becomes more natural. You remind each other of what's important when each of you forgets. The sixth and most important step is continuous decision-making. Waking up isn't a one-time event that happens and is done. It's a choice that needs to be renewed moment by moment. Every time you wake up in the morning, you choose again. Will I live this day consciously or on autopilot? Every time you pick up your phone, you choose again. Am I using this or is it using me? This constant decision-making is tiring at first. Your brain, accustomed to autopilot, will resist. But over time, awareness becomes more natural. New habits form. What once required effort begins to flow. You look back and realize you've changed in ways you couldn't have imagined. If you've made it this far, it wasn't by chance. Out of millions of people trapped in endless scrolling, you chose to stay, listen, and reflect. That choice is already the first awakening. It's proof that the flame within you still burns, that no algorithm has managed to extinguish it completely. You now carry a sacred responsibility, not only to wake up, but to stay awake in a world that does everything to lull you to sleep again. The road ahead won't be easy, but it will be real. You will have setbacks, moments of weakness, hours lost in empty distractions. That's human. What matters is not perfection, but persistence. Every time you realize you've fallen, get up. Every time you realize you've fallen asleep, wake up again. Victory lies not in never falling, but in never giving up on getting up.